Hello students and everyone else. This is the workshop's funny little video on story structure accompanied by the teacher's funny little drawings. And what we're going to be covering for this video, is narrative. And narrative follows the tension of the storyline as closely as possible. That is what this line represents, the tension of the story, and a lot of the terminology that we're going to be covering is it describes how that tension is evolving over the course of the narrative. So right now we have a narrative without very much tension. It is perhaps an idyllic setting with nothing going on, and strictly speaking, that's not a story. For a story to take place, there has to be drama, there has to be tension, there has to be conflict. And so you could describe a scene as beautifully, as poetically as well, name your poet. You could describe a scene poetically, and it will maybe still not be a story if there is no conflict to direct that. Conflict is what pushes us forward. Tension is what brings us to the edge of our seat as readers because we want to see what happens next. And so to create tension, perhaps we have, in this instance, a man approaching a door, slightly intoxicated, who looks angry. And we don't need to know what's behind that door. We just know as soon as he starts pounding on that door that there's some sort of conflict, there's some sort of tension, and we expect something to happen, perhaps something bad, and so the tension begins to rise even before we know really what is at stake. We just know that something is at stake. I would say that tension is actually in the reader's expectations for what conflict may arise, not necessarily what's on the page. We don't need that much detail for there to be tension. And as the tension rises, we see, well, we call that rising action. And the person who makes that tension rise, the person who causes problems for our hero or for the situation, that is the antagonist. The antagonist is the cause of the problems. The antagonist is the bad guy. Bad guys may be a little bit of a strong term, but he is the person who enters into the story, enters into the status quo where everything is calm and nice and pretty and idyllic and perhaps poetically described, and causes things to go awry. He is the slightly intoxicated purple man who approaches the door angrily and begins pounding on it. You can tell he's intoxicated, right? That's what I was going for in that drawing. And we see behind the door the protagonist, his ex-girlfriend. She's hesitating before she goes to the door. She can tell that he's angry. She can tell that there's something at stake. And our concern for her perhaps is immediate because she is not intoxicated. She is not angry. We're worried for her as soon as he knocks on the door. In fact, you can maybe feel the tension jog every time he knocks. You can see it in her face. Every time he knocks, she is even more disturbed. And this is what tension is. It's horror. It's not actually it's good horror. It's not actually the monster, but the potential for the monster. That's why Jaws is such a great movie, because we don't see the shark. We expect the shark. That's how the tension rises. The ocean is perfect for that. It's we can't see into the ocean. It's this other plane of existence, this other world. And so as people are eaten by the shark, as our heroes venture out to capture that shark, to kill that shark, we are always mindful of what we can't see and what is going to happen, the conflict that will eventually ensue. and of course it isn't pretty. Many people die, and there's that huge payoff in the end where Roy Scheider blows off the shark's head. But anyway, and again, where the tension responds to the action, immediate action. We don't need too much detail or backstory to have tension. Tension, conflict, drama, they arise quite naturally out of conflict. Just any simple conflict, and a well-placed rap on the door, or the sound of the door opening. We are worried for her that she is opening the door for him. Again, this is called rising action, and we're slowly building. If you look back, we're slowly building up to the climax of the scene, and eventually to the falling action. But she opens the door for him, as must be. Stories operate by necessity. You know, the door has to open eventually. They have to confront one another. The story can't just exist in a perpetual state of waiting for the conflict that our tension expects to happen. That tension must have a payoff. There must be some sort of climax, some sort of conflict. And so you can see that he's caught off guard. He's in the middle of knocking, and she's now waiting for the conflict to arise. My beautiful artwork, my beautiful, beautiful artwork. And perhaps, though, I mean, narrative doesn't have to continue forward. It can look back. It can do backstory to complicate what is happening in the moment. And that's called exposition. And these squiggly little loop-de-loops, I was imagining, you know, the 80s and 90s television, when a character would remember something that had happened to them in the past. There would be the wavy lines across their face as they stared blankly at or above the video camera. And that's kind of what I was going for here. But exposition is when we are cast back into a backstory, and the tension necessarily falls off when there is exposition. That's just how it happens. Readers generally relax when we are suddenly out of the moment where there is conflict, and looking back on maybe something that is very necessary for complicating that conflict, but is no longer within that conflict. And so we are cast back, and we see that they loved each other very much, and he loved her very much. And perhaps, actually, to complicate things, she broke his heart. And maybe she isn't as perfect as we would like her to be. We want to worry for her, we want to root for her, but suddenly our compassion for her and our dislike for him is complicated by the fact that she might have caused the state that he is in right now. She might have utterly destroyed his heart. And that complicates things in the moment as we come out of the exposition and join the conflict again, the present, that we see these different routes that he's been set upon now that they're broken up. And we're conscious suddenly of our own concern for him rising and pushing up the tension, because we're worried for her, but we're also concerned for him. We understand now where he's coming from, and that is something like another line of tension that pushes up the main tension, the main conflict, our main concern for her. And as they confront each other, finally, perhaps this is something that has been waiting a long time. They've been waiting a long time for. we are worried for both of them. We empathize with both of them, and that is making the tension confusing. Readers should be confused. Readers should be confused by the emotions that the conflict causes in them. That's good. That's a good story technique, because we like to be off balance, and we like to be thinking. That's why we read. Certainly we read to see our heroes succeed, and perhaps she's still our hero, but we also want to be challenged, and in this case we are challenged by the fact that we see, even though she is our hero and he is long since, because of the path that he has taken out of his grief, he's long since lost our absolute concern in his well-being, our empathy. We still want an absolute happy ending. We want him to get better, and we want her to be okay. You know, she's opened the door to him. She might be in immediate danger, or something bad, but we also want him to be okay. And maybe we are caught off guard by the climax. Maybe she is long past feeling guilt for how she's treated him, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe she needs to move on. I mean, it's certainly what he needs to do. But the climax is the point where the conflict meets the resolution of that conflict. It has to reach this point where something usually it's the character, the main character that we're with, making a decision and choosing a new way of doing something. So after the conflict is resolved, we have the falling action. And in a short story especially, the falling action doesn't really have to take up that much room. It just sort of happens. We go right up to the moment of the climax. We see a hint of the falling action, perhaps the slamming of the door and him walking away. There's very little need in a story with a good arc to have an extensive falling action, because a good climax will tell us where the story is going after the story ends. And so we see, with her slapping him and slamming the door in his face, that she has moved on, and the fact that he is walking away, that he may never return to try and confront her again. The details of the story might hint at whether he is going to continue down this path. The details might hint at whether they will ever speak again. But we have the conflict. We have the tension rising up to the confrontation and the climax, and then with that climax, a distinct sense of where the story is going afterward. And that's what makes a story, that rise in tension in the narrative up to the point of conflict, the climax, and then the falling off afterward. So that is my funny little video on basic terminology in story writing. I'm going to link to a more extensive video that someone else has made, but this is shorter and hopefully just a little comprehensive, and I hope everyone gets a good laugh at the teacher's funny little drawings as well. So have a good day, and I'll be looking for your responses to this on the due date that is stipulated on the schedule. So thank you. Bye.